Hello, Professor. This is Jared Barnick with Skill Building Assignment 2. You wanted us to start with the previous source code. I did that. You wanted us to implement some can-view, can-modify, view name type, access rights queries. I implemented a similar structure. I actually used create, read, update, delete, and I have a permission object and a list of permissions and a role that holds a list of permissions, and then every person has a role. And a permission can be created by passing in a field name and a type, and the type is create, read, update, and delete. I also included all or none to make it easier. And also, when passing in a field name, you can pass in all as well to make it so that an admin can just be all. And that is how permissions were done. The second thing you wanted, or the third thing you wanted to implement, is the aspects. So I'm going to go through. I'm going to start out with serialize and deserialize. Okay, for serialization, I used simple XML 2.6.3. It's a XML serializer, and that's what I used for XML serialization. And then I set up every object so it could be serialized. I'm not going to cover how that works here, but you can probably look at the code and see. Then I created this load-unload aspect. And in this load-unload aspect, I have a point gut called main method, which is for the main function. I have a before and an after, a load data and a save data. Just like you would expect, the load data will try to read from an XML file, and if that file's not there, or for whatever reason fails or has an exception, I'll go ahead and create some default data. And I have information on creating default data in this method. A lot of it uses stuff from my database of examples. And then I have the save data, which also serializes the person database to XML. And all of my people, all of the persons are in this person database here. And you wanted me to then, once I had that serialization working, to then move on to encrypt. I went ahead and did both encrypt and decrypt. And to do that, I first created encrypt and decrypt annotations. And of course, I went and started tagging. Pretty much all I tagged for this example was the name. You have get first name is decrypt, set first name encrypt, get middle name decrypt, set middle name encrypt, and get last name decrypts, set last name encrypts. Very simple. So let's go ahead and look at the encrypt aspect. It has a point cut, which basically looks for anything tagged with encrypt. I did limit it to parameters that took a string because I only use those, and that helped me just make life easy to make my fake encrypt guy. My fake encrypt object basically just wraps a string with pound encrypted pound on the front and pound encrypted pound on the back. And then my decrypt removes the pound encrypted pound from the front and the back. It was a nice simple way to fake encryption and decryption for this program. And if we go back, you can see that I hijack with an around the method, and then I replace it, and I add my fake encrypt on the string that comes in. Which works really well. Obviously, if you could encrypt any object, you wouldn't need to do just string, you could do object. And my decrypt is almost identical, and it just hijacks and returns fake encrypt.decrypt encrypted string. And this time I tried to see would it work fine, doing it without proceed, and it did. I just wanted to test that, which is why this one has a proceed. The encrypt has a precede and the decrypt doesn't. It seems like it doesn't make a difference whether I do that or not. No, I lied. I remember why I did that, because the get doesn't take a parameter, and so I didn't have the string to pass in to the method, so I just completely replaced the get. Yeah, I remember now. Okay, and now that we have encrypt and decrypt settings working, the next thing was protect. Protect I implemented very similar to encrypt decrypt. Let's go ahead and look. I created a role-based security aspect. However, I wanted to have some information in this aspect, so I gave it a permission type and a field name. And turns out that I wanted to use these two pieces of information in my aspect, and in order for a annotation to exist at runtime, you have to add this @retention policy.runtime tag. So I added that. That was a learning experience for me. And similar to how I just added encrypt and decrypt tags everywhere, I added this role-based security tag everywhere. So as you can see on the address, the phone number, almost everything, and I give them different permissions. So since this is add a phone number, can you create a new phone number and add it? Delete, can you remove a phone number? And up here I have the same thing, remove name, add name, can I create and delete a name on a person? And then of course I could have added on name if someone could update, or a name, but I didn't. I kind of just left everything in person for this example. Now if we go look at my secure by role aspect, this one's a little more complex because I'm making decisions in the aspect. Again, I am doing it for anything that I call that is annotated with role-based security. This time I don't care whether it takes a string or not. And I actually am using the role and the permissions that we talked about earlier. And based on the role and the permission, I can touch these fields. But when I first launch, I wanted my fake session to have an is loading. And if it is loading, I don't do any permission check. That way I can load all the data without doing a permission check. But once we are loaded and we set a role, which I set in run, it comes in here and it starts checking permission. The first thing it does is it will get the field name specified. And I'm doing that, actually the first thing it does is it gets the role-based security annotation. And once it has the role-based security annotation, it gets the field name from that. And if it's not specified, I'm doing a little code here that if you don't specify a name for the field, then I strip off the word get or set, and I do that. So here you see a tertiary operator. So I'm removing the prefix from the disjoin part.static.part.getSignature.getName, or I just call rbs.fieldName if the field name's populated. I thought it would be really cool to just, if I have get first name, that I don't have to put in a field name, it just works, and so I made that happen. Then my fake session, my singleton, will get the current role, it will get the permissions, and it will call can. And rbs.value is one of my CRUD writes, create, read, update, delete. And the field is the field name. So can I create, read, update, or delete on field first name? And if I can, then success. Role has permissions. And then I go ahead and proceed. If I can't, then I say failure. Role has insufficient permissions. And that's how I implement the permissions. And you can look at other further logic And if there's anything else you want to look at, I wanted to keep this at 10 minutes, and I'm right there. So thank you.